This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. Today I'm joined by Felipe Marin, who is joining us all the way from Casa Marin in Chile. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing very well, Jamie. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Let's get to the crux of the interview, which is, how did the ongoing pandemic impact you at Casa Marin?
Yes, it was a very hard situation, to be honest. We were at the beginning, we only had news from Europe, what
Right.
was happening over there. And we had a lot of fear because vintage was coming in.
Of course.
All the grapes were about to be picked because where we are at the vineyard in Loa Barca, it's actually a cool climate. So we pick slightly later on than most growers in Chile. So in March is when we pick grapes, and that's when the pandemic, the disease came into our country.
Right.
And it was chaos because I had my staff, and of course safety is first. We couldn't expose our pickers very much, so the disease was coming very slowly. I believe at the beginning it was in the south, with all the cruise ships in
Oh, right. Okay. Yep, that
in
makes sense.
Chile.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, yes, and of course some flights coming from Europe in Santiago, but where the vineyard is still a very small village, so we the pressure of the disease came later on, so we still had some days to move fast and
Yes.
try to pick as much as we could. The problem, of course, it was that sometimes, or maybe at some point, the grapes were not ready to be harvested. But we had to rush. We still had to, because we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know if they're gonna shut down the village, if the quarantine was gonna happen very soon or not. So it was all new for us, and a lot of desperation and confusion was coming in. But luckily, the government, the strategy was to put cities in quarantine, not the whole country, just by cities, where all the pressure was concentrated.
So you never actually had a national lockdown per se, did you?
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
No. And I believe, of course, that was at least for our industry, it was good because we still managed to work. And of course, there were some cities close to our vineyard that they went to lockdown,
right.
But we had a permit so that we can move around and just go to work and back. It was like a special permit. So we were able to deal with that, and of course, we as a winery we had to take some actions, like of course, measuring the temperature, using a lot of the hand wash, and talking to our crew to let them know that this is happening and this is serious.
Yes.
I remember that we had at that time some crew from Haiti, Haiti, and they were telling me that Black people, they didn't get the disease. They were immune to
it's
the
quite
disease.
the opposite. It's quite the opposite, actually, right? So
and yes, and I had to tell them and to give them like a class and showing them that this was happening in their country and many other countries, and actually, like you're saying, it was worse for them, for their race. So
yes, yeah.
So but at the beginning, they thought that they were immune.
Oh boy. Now, as things developed, Santiago became the kind of I guess, the hub of infections throughout Chile. How, excuse my ignorance here, but how far away are you from Santiago?
Yes, we're 120 kilometers
Right,
away from Santiago, so we're not far, but far enough to be safe. The problem is that many people that have holidays in Santiago, they go to the beach, and that's where we are. So that's what I'm saying. Like San Antonio, which is a big city close by, they had to shut down.
right.
Also because the population is higher, as well as Valparaiso. Probably you know that Valparaiso, it's a big city, and it's a holiday destination. So a lot of people have second houses. So many people in Santiago, they thought, okay, instead of staying the pandemic in my apartment closed down, I rather go to my second house in the beach
Oh,
and
right.
stay, there. But luckily, the government was very strict about it, and they had a lot of control. And they give you a fine if they'll catch you in your second house, they'll fine you.
How satisfied have you been with your government's handling of the pandemic, the mitigation and the management of it? Because I know there have been a number of quite large political protests throughout the pandemic in Chile.
Yes. Well, at the beginning, it was very good. But then the government, I guess, didn't take an account that there were a lot of areas in Santiago where many people live in one house,
Right, right.
and too much people all together. So at the beginning, the control was good, but then once the disease started to get to those areas, then the numbers, went up very fast,
Yeah,
very, very fast. But then I have to admit that once the lockdown came into those areas, now the numbers are actually quite good,
oh, okay.
especially if we compare to, for instance, Argentina or Peru, which are our neighbors. They're still having a hard time,
Right,
and they've
right.
been locked down pretty much the whole country. So now the curve in Chile went down, and there's still, of course, some cases, but the curve went down.
Right.
Whereas in Argentina, there's still that they haven't even reached the peak, and they've been 9 months in confinement. So
Wow. Wow.
so, if, of course, if we compare to other countries in the area, here in South America, we've been doing very good. But of course, we want to do better, of
Yeah,
course, and
yeah.
maybe it's not good to compare to some neighbors, but yes, I would say that in the middle of the process, it was a lot of chaos,
Yes.
and the government sent people to the south or to the north for healthcare. So that was good. Actually, they invest a lot of money in equipment, machinery to have people breathing. So I have to admit that we never got to a collapse of the
Right.
system.
I was about to ask, I'm
Um,
not familiar with how healthy your healthcare system is. Is it still in reasonably good shape?
Oh yes, no, now it's good. Now it's good, but I would say that when the peak was happening, we were in the limits. Like
Right, right,
maybe, of course, some maybe there were some not the best, but we never really collapsed. Like people outside the hospitals and dying in the streets,
right,
like in
right.
Ecuador happened. So yes, but maybe the management within Santiago, I would say that they were having these lockdowns per communities, per areas,
Yep.
and those areas sometimes were not very well defined, and maybe that strategy was not the best. It probably would have been better to close down bigger areas.
Right, right, right. I see what you mean. They were almost too specific.
Yes,
Right, I
yes, too
understand, I
specific,
understand. So you must
too
help me with the
specific.
timeline here because you managed to get the harvest in. You said
Mhm.
some of the grapes were maybe not quite as ripe as you would have liked them to be, but how was the vintage overall, apart from being very stressful?
Yes. Well, I would say that overall it was not bad, just by the fact that we have different varieties in the
Right, right,
vineyard. So they have different picking times,
of
you
course.
know. So I would say that at the beginning we rushed too fast, mostly in the Gewürztraminer and maybe a little bit on the Pinot. But then the rest, the other varieties like Sauvignon Blanc, Sauvignon Gris, Syrah, they came later on. So
Right.
then we were more confident, and we never got into lockdown where the vineyard is. So we managed to harvest in the right timings, but that was later on. At the beginning, it was chaos because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Now, to add to the chaos of your vintage, the pandemic, you also had a child during the pandemic, did you not?
Yes,
How was that?
yes, probably that was the hardest for us, because we were very, everybody talked that in the hospitals it was a high risk of
Of
having,
course, yes, yeah,
to
yeah.
be.
Um,
Yes, and but the clinics and the hospitals here, they were empty. They were empty, in other areas,
mhm.
like we know there are areas were empty. Actually, they lost a lot of money, and so it was very easy. There were nobody in the hospital. Everyone that have meetings with the doctors, they didn't go, so that was good, but it was scary to see all the people, all the staff that have to be, with a smiley face and dressed with flowers and colors for the kids. It was not the case. They were
Of
full
course.
mask,
Yep, yeah, yeah.
with the shield. So that was a little bit invasive at the beginning. But then later on, we realized that they were just protective gear, and they were as kind and as friendly as probably was normal time. Um, but I have to admit that they wanted us to leave as soon as possible the hospital.
Right,
So they
right.
they kind of like tried to step up everything and send us home.
And you must have been relieved when you did manage to get home with your family.
Yes, of course, we were very very happy. But these guys at the hospital, they did a really good job, and they gave us this feeling of warmth and being calm, and that's how it happened. And then of course, when once we were here, everything was more relaxed and
Of
more
course,
calm,
of
for
course.
sure. Yeah.
So, looking back on what's happened so far during the pandemic, I always like to think about silver linings throughout the pandemic. What have you learned or experienced or knowledge that you've gleaned from things that have happened within the last 9 months?
um, well, I realized that we have to have a better value, or better, everything that we do now, we appreciate it more. You know, the small things, even at your garden, you get to see
Yeah,
things growing. You I don't know, when now that things are more calm, now we can go to maybe a restaurant and to in the terrace and have some food, and you enjoy everything much more, of course. And also when you talk with friends that you haven't seen for a long time, like when you start this conversation, you ask, hey, how everything safe, everybody's
Yeah.
okay, because you never know. You never know. Maybe some familiars of them, they have problems, or you don't know. So it's good to be to ask, to ask, and to have a sense of warmth, and be friendly and kind with people.
I understand exactly what you're saying. You mentioned restaurants there. Were restaurants ever closed in your area?
Yes, yes. It's true that we never went to lockdown, but there was a law, of course, that most public, places, or private, closed areas like restaurants, gyms, and areas to make sports, they were all closed, all closed. So,
So how did
so
that
as
impact your how did that impact your sales?
oh,
I would
big
imagine,
time, of
yes, yeah.
course,
You
really,
also
really bad.
you also had
Um,
a 10 p.m. curfew as well, didn't you?
I'm sorry, I forgot what is curfew.
Curfew is where you have to be off the streets by 10 p.m. At night.
Ah, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
That's been happening everywhere, national, everywhere in
yes.
Chile.
Is that
Yes,
still in effect right now?
yes,
Oh wow.
yes,
Okay, okay.
yes,
So
yes.
without wanting to pry too much, and if you're open to telling me this, how much did you see your sales drop off during the pandemic?
You know, quite a lot, because our wines are a little bit more expensive
Yeah,
than
yeah,
average wines here in Chile and also elsewhere. So our wines, they sell in restaurants.
of course.
A few of them goes to the wine shop, or they didn't even make it to the supermarket. So yes, our sales dropped a lot. Luckily, only 40% of our sales stays here in the Chilean market, which is actually a lot. Actually, it's not a small number. But in the other hand, here in Chile, a lot of companies start to develop online sales, and of course, we had a good number of people that follow us in the social media.
Right.
In Facebook or Instagram, we have over 10,000 people that follow us, and that's a lot here for Chile. And so we managed to have an e-commerce, and if we compare it to last year's, of course, e-commerce has been growing more than 150%.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
And of course, that is not enough to make up the losses of the restaurant sales. But this same scenario happened in other countries like Denmark, for instance, and the importer that we work in Denmark, for instance, they do a lot of online sales, and they grew a lot, a
Oh,
lot.
okay.
So, and they bought us a lot of wine, and Brazil as well. The online sales picked up super, super good. So we luckily we're not suffering.
Right.
We're not like having to close down or anything like that. We managed to deal with this.
I'm very glad to hear that. So, where are you at today as a country with regards to the virus? And do you see the regulations that are still in place, such as the curfew, being lifted anytime soon?
Maybe not, and I believe that's good, because the a lot of young people don't pay attention to this,
Oh, yeah.
and they if we didn't have this curfew, there would be a lot of parties. Here as Latinos, we like to party, and actually, several of them were caught. Like people doing parties, and they all had big fines. And
Yeah.
and they so that's good, and I think that this should keep going on. The problem is that, of course, there's always people that doesn't benefit from this, like bars or discotheques and
Yeah.
places like that. They are pretty much all broke.
Well, do you see a way out of this? What are your hopes for the immediate future with regards to this pandemic?
I believe that now we're slowly losing the the parameters being
Hmm.
too strict, and I think the benefit for that is that the country's moving because there's no economy that can handle this being on this being locked down
Indeed,
like
indeed,
like
yeah.
I said minutes ago, like Argentina completely locked down, and now the level of poverty in Argentina is more than 40%,
Oh boy,
and the economy in Argentina is just, I don't know what's gonna happen, and
that's sad to hear.
it's of course that's gonna affect us because we're
Yeah,
neighbors.
yeah,
We want everybody to be safe and sound, but I believe that it's going to be a hard time. Of
yeah.
course, now restaurants they're allowed to open in their in the terrace outside, but still that's 30% of what they can handle, in terms of people. So now the government in some areas they're closing the streets so that they can offer
Yes, yeah.
they can work. But if I look at what's happening in Europe, you know, this is happening again, and of course, same thing is going to happen here. I mean, that's
And
for
we're
sure.
we're going into winter right now, okay? So
Yes,
and that changes everything because we get down to in Canada we can get down to -30, which would
yeah,
terrify you, I think. It's and so that's everybody's going to be indoors, right? So it's who knows where this will be leading. But perhaps what I should do is check in with you in about 3 months and see where you are down there.
definitely,
Thank you.
definitely. And I like to add something that
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
remember that Chile is very long and thin. So at the bottom of our country is very cold as well. Not as
Yeah,
cold
yeah,
as Canada,
yeah.
but it's super cold.
Yeah.
We are closer to Antarctica, and
Good point.
these guys, those cities at the bottom of our country, they're still having high numbers. Huh?
Mm,
In Santiago, we're dealing with it. The numbers are very low, but in the south, because of what you're saying, that people goes indoors, they
yeah.
don't open up to ventilate their houses. So they're still struggling. And let's remember that they cannot open their restaurants in the terrace because it's just too cold or rainy. So
Yeah.
it's a big problem. Yes,
Well, Felipe, I really do appreciate you spending some time this evening with Good Food Revolution, and it would be nice to catch up with you in a few months and just see where things are at.
definitely, Jamie. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and hope
Excellent.
to talk soon.
And you stay safe over there.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, same.
Bye for now.